I decided to look for a video recently that was philosophical for my philosophy club that I run in the high school. And in searching, I found one about whether or not the past had really happened. And as I'm watching the video, they're discussing how did the past really happen, or how do we know it happened, last Thursdayism, did it happen or not? And then the person in the video quoted what he called his favorite philosophical razor. He said, this is a philosophical question, and there are these razors that philosophy has. And he mentioned Occam's razor, but his favorite one is Newton's flaming laser sword. And so here's what the sword is. It's, if it cannot be settled by experiment, then it is not worthy of debate. Simply put, if there's some statement, something that's being discussed like last Thursdayism, and we look at it and we can't settle the question by experiment, then it's not even worth debating. We just throw it out the window. Now, there are a couple of problems with this. The first is that Newton never said it. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. But there's another major problem with this statement. Take a look at it. If it cannot be settled by experiment, then it is not worthy of debate. Well, the question comes up then, is this statement something that can be settled by experiment? In other words, can we settle by experiment the fact that if it cannot be settled by experiment, then it is not worthy of debate? Let's put it this way. Here's a diagram of all the different types of disciplines there are: science, philosophy, math, theology, art, literature, history, and the rest. And so the question is, where does this statement is saying that if it cannot be settled by experiment, it's not worthy of debate. Essentially, every discipline here is crossed out except for science. Any statement made by any other discipline is not worthy of debate and has to be tossed out the window. The question, though, is where does this statement go? This statement belongs in philosophy. This is actually a philosophical statement about all the disciplines in general, but it has crossed out its own category, and therefore it has crossed out itself. This is the logical fallacy that we call self-refuting, and this is a great example of a self-refuting statement. And strangely enough, it claims to be a philosophical razor, but clearly it cuts off philosophy. Speaking of cutting off, here's another image. Imagine here's the tree of knowledge, and there are all these different subjects. There's math, history, theology, science, philosophy, and others as well. I simplified. And this statement, though, about what we can and cannot debate belongs on the branch of philosophy. It's a philosophical statement, and so it belongs in the branch of philosophy. But it says that really only science is the way we can know things. And so every other branch gets cut off except for science, and even the branch that it's sitting on gets cut off. So it cuts off its own branch. It's like sawing off the branch that you're sitting on. And again, this is just an image for what it means for a statement to be self-refuting. And so when we look at it closely, if it cannot be settled by experiment, then it's not worthy of debate. This is just a rephrasing, a less precise way of saying that science is the only way we can know what is true. But again, as we've seen, this is not a scientific statement. It's a statement about science. It is a philosophical statement. And therefore, since it's a philosophical statement, it is self-refuting. This is also a rehashing of the old, much discredited philosophy of logical positivism. It killed itself off because it was, after all, self-refuting. And since the statement and this idea in general is self-refuting, it is literally irrational. It is an irrational statement. It is very common. It is an idea that a lot of people have. I think I blame it in part on lack of philosophical education. But the fact that it's common doesn't make it any less irrational.